everybody, and welcome back to another episode of On the Record. I am Alex, joined, as always, by my co-host for this series, Tanner. Tanner, how you doing tonight?
Doing great. Getting ready to get back onto the record.
And we have a little special surprise guest with us tonight. You folks at home may know him. He's the man with a chair that's got a mohawk, baby. Please welcome Geoff. Here he is.
It's good to be here, fellas. As always, it's always pleasant when I'm here on the pod. I appreciate whenever y'all let me on here. I got Tanner's favorite pillow.
Yes.
We kept it out especially for him this evening. And what are we talking about tonight, Alex? What are going to be discussing?
So, as some of you folks may know, there's this new Bruce Springsteen biopic. The new Springsteen picture is out in theaters. And it's not necessarily about his entire life, soup to nuts. It's specifically about the period in time in which he was making Nebraska. So, coinciding with that, I think the same day the movie came out, Bruce Springsteen released an expanded edition of the album Nebraska. And it includes a live show that he did at Count Basie Theater to no audience like a year ago. It's got some demos. It's got Nebraska, the like definitive release. And it also has a little bit of fabled lore on it, which is Nebraska Electric. So I don't want to do all the yakking. I also don't want to put anyone on the spot. Would anyone in the class care to take a whack at the lore behind Nebraska Electric?
So Nebraska Electric, and it came out made around the same time as the Born in the USA album. This was the era. So what we're going to be talking about tonight, specifically when we get into kind of the music of this new release, is the electric version of this album. There's three parts of it: a live version, kind of an alternate version, and then an electric version. So Bruce wrote these songs when he was living by himself, this kind of nowhere place in New Jersey. And he was reading a lot of literature, watching a lot of movies, and really just kind of inspired him to start doing songwriting in a little bit different way than he had before. Everybody is familiar with the kind of bombast of Born to Run and Born in the USA as we know it. And songs like that, like even The River, there's a lot of songs where they clearly had that Bruce Springsteen sound. So he, as a endlessly restless individual, felt fairly, I don't know, I want to say he felt stagnant in that sound, but I think he didn't want that to be his only thing. So he, kind of is ingesting all of this stuff. I think Flannery O'Connor is specifically a author he was reading a lot of that kind of inspired him to write this way, especially a song like Mansion on the Hill, and kind of those really the more personal vignettes. Up till this point, he'd kind of written about characters, and while obviously a lot of that stuff was about himself, a lot of it was through the eyes of other people. This was kind of one of the first times he started writing in bulk through the eyes of himself as the narrator and the kind of experiencer of these stories. The record label looked at this album because it came out mostly acoustic. A lot of songs you could even say felt very country, like especially Johnny 99. Certainly bluesy, had a definitely a far different feel from anything he'd done up to that point. Now, I don't think people were surprised he was capable of writing songs like this. But this is not what the public wanted from Bruce Springsteen, was songs like this. There's an emotional heaviness to it, a starkness to it, certainly because he did it all on a 4-track recorder. So there's harmonica, there's guitar and his vocals, and a 4th track sometimes of him doing some kind of ghostly sounds in the background. Very, very simply recorded, and that's part of what made it beautiful. That's what he wanted to release. Like, that was the next album he had written that he wanted to put out there. Record label didn't love it. He suggested, okay, well, maybe we do put the whole band behind it. Steve Van Zandt is the one that kind of convinced him these songs are perfect as is. Like, this is the way it's meant to be. Like, when he brought those demos to the band, he was like, we can do some other stuff, maybe take some things from here like they did with Born in the USA. And that's how they kind of made the Born in the USA album that absolutely turned Bruce Springsteen into a megastar. that he probably would not have turned into if he didn't release Nebraska, or if he didn't, release Born in the USA and release Nebraska instead. And the funny thing is, Nebraska is looked at by a lot of folks in the Bruce Springsteen, fandom as probably his finest songwriting that he's ever done.
Tandy, care to weigh in?
Yeah, and just like kind of like jumping in on that, like he kind of found himself, I don't want to say like disillusioned, but he like found himself like kind of distant, like the success of the River and the River tours and everything. Like the guy just kind of needed a break, and he escaped into these films and books and literature and things like that. And really, I look back at it, and it's like he had just come out with The River, which is a huge album, massive album, and he starts writing these songs. At one point in time, they thought they were going to do another double album, which would have been the acoustic and then the electric. And I think that would have been a very bad decision to do as well. Because I just think going back-to-back double albums, especially with how stark the difference is, like Nebraska kind of, it just like sits on its own in the Springsteen discography. He has, since released other, acoustic and different kind of solo albums after kind of the breakup of the E Street Band as you get like through the 80s and everything. But at that point in time, like, as you said, like the label didn't really want this. If you had told Springsteen's biggest fans back at the time that this is what was going to be the next album, people probably wouldn't have been super amped on it.
True.
And again, it's like little Steven calls it like a legitimate piece of art. Like this is like kind of if anybody talks smack about Springsteen and saying that he can only do like jaw rock or whatever, or he's nothing without the band or anything like that, like this is your golden example of like when you strip him down to his core, he can put out a record that rivals your Bob Dylan's, you know what I mean? Rivals your Woody Guthrie's. He's very much in the same plane as them when he strips everything down. And it's also kind of like one of the first DIY records that exists in history. Like in an era where everyone was building like kind of bigger and bigger studios and trying to get more and more things on tracks, he sits down in his house in isolation with a 4-track recording thing that had his guitar tech go by him. And it's honestly for me, this is an album that was a blind spot for me for a very long time. Just because I for a very long time thought that Springsteen only did like the big bombast and the big band and ripping sax solo. So for a very long time, I didn't even have this on vinyl. I picked it up within the last couple of years, and that's really when like started to spend some time with the album. And again, did not know that this box set, this re-release, was coming out. Actually saw a physical copy in a record store last week. Checked the price tag. Maybe we'll wait a little bit on that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back on the shelf. Yeah.
Maybe we'll put that one back. But no, very excited to go through these songs and to talk about them with you guys because it's very, very unique. It's also something that like Springsteen denied the existence of for a very long time, which is very interesting. And his other bandmates were like, "No, it exists. It rocks. It rips. Like it's great. It's just like it wasn't perfect. Like it wasn't right." And then Bruce is like, "Yeah, I don't think we ever did that."
And it's like certainly he's played a lot of these songs live, like, and obviously tuned into the E Street Band versions of them. So, like Atlantic City, there's some awesome versions that he's done of that live with Tom Morello, especially. And then also the Ghost of Tom Joad that he's done with him too. So he's definitely done a lot of the non-typical Bruce Springsteen songs. He's definitely done a lot of those in the E Street style live for sure. Hearing these songs, like the Nebraska album, I mean, it certainly wasn't my first entry into Bruce Springsteen. That would obviously be, Born to Run. And then I got into Darkness on the Edge of Town and then Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey, so like my way into it was certainly the early part of his career. And then I started getting into some songs on Born in the USA. So, obviously I love Born in the USA. What a great song. But songs like Bobby Jean, Downbound Train, it's for me, there's a lot of songs that what I liked about it is the music didn't match the lyrics. Like because I've always been a very, a lyrical person. When I listen to songs, if the lyrics aren't good, I can only enjoy them so much. With him, songs like Born in the USA, perfect example. People misinterpreted that song forever, and they still do. And it's very much what felt like to me a realistic way of looking at the world. Like there's good there, but you have to acknowledge that there's bad as well. Like if there's two sides to everything, we can't only pretend everything's good. You got to see the grime as well. It can't all be the shine. For me, going into the Nebraska album the first time, it's kind of like, what is this? You hear this kind of droning harmonica, and then the kind of tune he sings with. It's funny that Woody Guthrie was brought up. Like the tune that he kind of sings Nebraska in sounds kind of like This Land Is Your Land. It's got those same kind of movements, and they change them enough so that obviously he wasn't getting sued, I guess. But it really, he was wearing a lot of his influences on his sleeve, and I felt like that was the case on the original release of Nebraska, but especially the case on the Electric Nebraska. I think you got a lot of that like 50s kind of rockabilly sound. You know exactly the kind of music he grew up on. Johnny 99 is a great example of that. Downbound Train is a great example of that on the electric versions of these. So it's just very interesting to hear the differences between that original release and what these are, because it does change the tone of a lot of the songs too. So it's the lyrics, he changed some things here and there. He kind of stole from some songs and put them in others. Like I like if he could have done the original lyrics of Atlantic City with this rock and roll version of this one on the electric version, like I felt like that would have been perfect. But that's where the workshop part of it comes in. That's where he was still figuring it out. And I think that's also a very interesting thing about this album is it feels like it's better than anything I could have made, but it's still not as good as Bruce Springsteen wanted it to be, even as good as it is.
Well, and for me, this is interesting proof of concept in the sense that the lore behind it is he obviously makes this bedroom recording, and it's to give E Street a sense of like, this is not just like the instrumentation necessarily or what I'm going to be singing, but this is the feeling. This is what this should feel like. Mm-hmm. And they laid down these electric tracks, and like as we'll get into, I have a bit of a controversial opinion, but laying down these tracks with the band, good, but not quite what he had achieved on the little cassette that he kept in his pocket. It was like this totem. He had channeled his entire experience, like coming off of the road from the river and having like it's pretty ballsy to go from having a hit like Hungry Heart to burying yourself in Colts Neck, New Jersey, and kind of ruminating on this while you're consuming the literature and the film that he was, and like Flannery O'Connor inspiring him to make these songs more specific again, because his stuff at this point, by his own admission, had become like a little more vague, esoteric, not like you can't understand what he's talking about, but it was more of the feelings than it was necessarily like hard narrative. Coming up with these stories about outlaws and losers of the working class, it was him getting back to his roots, because he was inspired by Jersey, and he wrote like the working man music, that blue collar music. And then he goes out and his career, like the sound expands, he gets more into the rock and roll, a little further from where he started off, and he caught that right as it was starting to happen and went, I need to get back in touch with that. And in doing so, creates this album that is just like the blue collar worker. There's no frills. That is why I think it's such a special album. I think Nebraska, the official release, is very, very special because it is incredibly literary. It's like you talk about like poet laureate stuff. You could nominate this for some kind of achievement in like short fiction or poetry. The lyric writing is that good. It is that strong. It is that specific. It is that unique. It is American literature set to music, a lot like a Pete Seeger or a Woody Guthrie, always destined to be this way. And hearing these songs gone electric drives that point home, because a couple of the songs transform, like the Atlantic City version, like transforms it in an interesting but not better but not worse way. It's interesting. It's kind of over here doing its thing. And then there are some versions that really reinforce this could never have been electric. This could never have been electric. This was destined to be exactly what he had made, and not realizing that it was going to be a commercial release. It was the pure, raw, genuine article. And you hear it in every creak of the chair, every thing where he spikes the fucking recorder. You hear it all over this thing. And I stand by the fact that this is legitimate American literature.
I love this album. Like I can't really say it any more complicated than that. I just love this album. And I think you were exactly right, Alex, when you're saying there's a lot of these songs where it's a change, doesn't make it better. But there's a lot of these songs where it should have been this way. Like there's some songs he should have taken off Born in the USA, made them the more acoustic versions and put them on Nebraska, and then took those and put them on Born in the USA as like Johnny 99. I mean, it's fantastic in its original version, but when that bass gets grooving, and that the way that song shuffles, the way his vocals are even more pronounced and like intense when he's singing it, like that song to me, I think was made better being electric. Now that one I think is, for me, is kind of an objective thing, like that. Subjectively, Born in the USA, I like this version more than the original. Now that's something I think Born in the USA is such a canon Bruce Springsteen song. I think there's a lot of people that will never say that, and I won't blame them. It is the one that really everybody thinks of. They think of Bruce Springsteen, the American flag with a hat in his back pocket. Like when people think of Bruce Springsteen, that's usually what they're thinking of. But the way that song had its meaning completely missed, just right over people's heads, you can't miss it in the way he did it on the Electric Nebraska. That's why that, to me, I think it accentuated and kind of proved the words he was singing a lot more than the glossier rave up version they did for the album.
Yeah, Johnny 99, for instance, like the tour that I saw Bruce and the band on, like they played that song live, and I was like, oh, like this rocks. Like I wasn't expecting this coming in from obviously hearing it off of Primary Nebraska. I'm glad you brought up the cassette, Alex, because that's something that I immediately bumped on when I was doing research about this, was the fact that he carried the cassette around with him, and like the physical manifestation of it, and like what it meant to him physically, what he had on cassette, and also the fact that everyone in his circle around him was like, this is you. You have to release this as you. Like, we had a fun time recording it, whatever, we put in the hours, but like Nebraska is you in that room. That is Nebraska. Now, Nebraska Electric, all, things that get released later on, B-sides, whatever. That's kind of the nice thing about, as time goes on and the music industry kind of dwindles down and there aren't a lot of acts out there that are like on the level of Springsteen, that the label will go back in and start pulling stuff out of the archives. And so we get things like this. We get things like his other archival releases. They're releasing like full shows through like nugs.net now, full like vintage shows. Like, we're really getting a lot of Springsteen vintage recordings out of there, obviously, including the full band versions of these. The Born in the USA is it's a very weird experience to listen to, because like you said, Geoff, like it is canon, and like it's one of his biggest radio hits. From the second the song starts, what song it is. It from that
drum
opening
hit.
Yes, from the opening hit, the opening phrase, exactly what it is. And to see that on here before my first listen, I was like, whoa, what's this going to be like? And the fact that it was so different defied like all expectations, and it like just exists kind of as this other singular version of it. For me, Born in the USA is the song that like got me into Springsteen when I was a kid. It's like the first one that I got and kind of like connected. I'd probably heard Born to Run before or whatever, but like connected like, oh, this is Bruce Springsteen.
Mm-hmm.
So the experience of hearing what that song kind of started out as was very, very, very unique, I'll say. And it still like feels weird. It doesn't feel bad. It just feels weird.
It's the original's evil twin.
Correct. Yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
parallel universe, Born in the USA. It's not a song that Ronald Reagan would have used.
We're in the correct timeline to get this version of Born in the USA right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Alex, did you find any songs that surprised you in either a good or a bad way?
I guess intrigued more than surprised. I guess the first one that comes to mind is just the difference between Atlantic City, the two versions of that. Obviously, the electric harkens to more like the darkness on the edge of town kind of days to it. You could see it kind of fitting in seamlessly there. Again, neither an improvement nor a demotion to it. It's just it for me. What's more interesting about it? It's not like, oh wow, I got another version of this great song. It really does help with the contrast and with like driving home this idea that I don't think you can these kinds of lyrics and this kind of storytelling lends itself to the full band. So like Tanner's talking about how they kind of bowed out and were like, this is you and this needs to be you. And I mean, it's kind of crazy how much like some of the songs, which one he tries to fucking spit out the words and it is just, he can't do it. Open All Night.
Mm-hmm.
The like Chuck Berry urgency to it works in an acoustic.
Oh, did he freeze? Is he frozen for you?
Well, like warp speed. What's that?
You were frozen on our side, so hopefully the recording came through.
Oh, I hope so. Other than that, where'd I freeze? Where'd I leave off?
Right when you started talking about Open All Night.
Oh shit. Okay. Well, you know what? This might be a little double information. Whatever. We'll do some creative editing. Basically, to finish that thought for Open All Night, you can get away, as I said, with the Chuck Berry like rhythm and blues kind of honky tonk-esque sound. Works in the acoustic because it's not really something you'd expect to go together. So it makes it unique. But when you try to do it like at warp speed, it's like Dewey Cox, where they try to do Walk Hard when he's all methed out. Me, my big, I'm a dying day. Walk hard, walk hard. Why are you playing all fast like some kind of punk? It's the same thing. He's trying to spit out all of these wonderful lyrics that need time to breathe and like need the space to flesh out the thought. So I think it would have been, I bet you would have seen this be a real critical and commercial disappointment if those had come out. I think with the benefit of hindsight, we like a lot of this stuff and it works and it's bringing the Electric Nebraska lore. It was the Snyder cut, released the Snyder cut before that was a thing. Like, so bringing the lore home, landing that plane, that's very gratifying. But I think if at the time they charged ahead with releasing Nebraska as an electric or as an E Street album, I think it would have probably been a huge disappointment. And could be like a different, branch of the multiverse here. Who knows? But I think these songs were intended to be the way he recorded them the first time. They were perfect in their imperfection. So I think it's important to hear these songs in this context because it just makes you have that much of a greater appreciation for like who he is as an artist when he's stripped down to his barest essence, and for the fact that he had like the courage of his conviction. He went in a direction that he thought maybe he was supposed to go when he brought the band into it, but with their encouragement, and this is where you're a great bandmate and an unselfish musician and a great friend, is you could, get the shine off of I played on that album, whether it's good or bad. But they were like, do this yourself, bet on yourself, we'll catch you on the next one. And then, of course,
Yeah, then of course
Born
the
in the
biggest
USA.
album,
Yeah.
the biggest album any of them have ever been on is the next thing they're on. Yeah.
So your kindness and your sensibility, your concept of friendship are rewarded in letting him do his thing. This is one of those, like, maybe it's woo-woo to be like it's destiny, it's fate, but this kind of feels like one of those fated pieces of art that like came from a very, very specific place, and he kind of delivered it to us. American stories, American rock and roll stories, stripped down to their barest essence for maximum impact.
Another song that I felt like was different, but I felt like what they added was, I think, really worth it, was Mansion on the Hill. I think having the organ in the background, I think, really matches the mood of that song. Like it makes it feel less stark. It makes it feel more like kind of a wistful, like remember when kind of story, rather than kind of the picture of depression it was initially. Where it's just, where the initially on the kind of original recording, it kind of gives me the sense of like memories flooding onto somebody in a bad way. It's like all these things they're remembering that have caused them to be in this kind of negative place. And while the lyrics, I think, are essentially unchanged, I'm pretty sure, from the original versus the electric on this one. One of the few that didn't really receive a lot of different lyrics. To me, it just made it sound more like a dream, I guess, more like it just gave it more of a ethereal feel to it, where you could really imagine these, instead of it being such stark pictures of these things, it felt like you were just kind of coasting by them, seeing them as they go by kind of through a mist. Like it just, for some reason, I think when you were talking about, the feeling of the song was really what was important. Like it needed to feel a certain way. I felt like they nailed it on this version of Mansion on the Hill.
Polite off, you go, Tanner.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to derail the conversation, but I was like looking back and like thinking, like, in this era, in this time, like, what is this around when Dylan was doing his Christian albums? And it is. So like there's also kind of this like vacuum in the music industry for someone to release Bob Dylan-esque albums.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of slotted in right there as well, because it's right in the middle. Dylan's last gospel one in the trilogy comes out in '81, and Nebraska comes in right on the heels of that.
And this was in a year that was dominated by synth stuff.
I'm pretty sure Def Leppard existed at this time. So let's back off with the only guy doing Bob Dylan stuff.
Springsteen again, like defying things, right? Like, so he does this on the heels of The River. And then in the 90s, when like grunge stuff's happening and he kind of like gets, says, I'm not going to go do that either.
Yeah.
He still puts out albums. They aren't as big as this one or anything like that. But so he still, doesn't, he beats to his own drum at times. But again, like, he's just in this house, right, putting these tracks down to show the band. They're not intended to see the light of day, really. How many artists can you think of that have had albums like that come out, where they're unknowingly recording the album when they're recording the album?
I can think of one, and actually the three of us have covered it. Caroline Rose, Year of the Slug.
Mm-hmm.
And also The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald was recorded for the first take they ever did together.
Yes, and they spent 2 weeks. They spent 2 weeks trying to replicate it, and they could not do it.
Well,
so it's that first take of them playing it live.
Which
again, yeah. Which again, the anniversary of that just passed the other day.
Yeah. Right.
And I think it's so, I remember when we all used to be able to play together, and there's just some of those moments where you just could feel that it clicked. You could just feel that, and it might be that there's some songs we could just never figure out how to play. Usually I wasn't good enough at guitar to play any sort of the rhythm lines or anything like that. But it was like sometimes when you get it right, you really got it right. And sometimes it was the first time you tried it. And I think when somebody's as talented as Bruce Springsteen, already had established himself, he was in that wave of the new Dylans, to talk about Bob Dylan again, but he was in that wave of people that everyone kind of expected to have that same level of songwriting. And I think after the first, Bruce Springsteen album, the Asbury Park album, I think after that, he went into the Wild, the Innocent, the E Street Shuffle, played a lot of like jazz songs. So that was even, I think, a response to what people expected of him as well. So he'd had it kind of a history of this already, of, okay, this is what people expect of me, but this is not, he's not necessarily upset about that. He's not holding it against them, but he's like, this is not what I feel like making right now. I want to do something. This is what I'm feeling like. I've gone through all this stuff over these years, huge tour for Born to Run, huge tour for The River. So it's like he'd been on the road for what, 5, 6 years at that point, like straight. So he needed a break. It is what it is. And I think someone like Bruce Springsteen, a break to him is not remove music and completely remove yourself from the process. It's remove the distractions from the process. And I think that's exactly what he did. And I think it was that clarity of mind and kind of the purpose of what he was doing. He's like, okay, this is finally, I have enough success where I can really do what I want to do. And I think that was the mentality he had. And if only everybody could just have the talent and the wherewithal to set their mind to doing something and then make an all-time classic of whatever that is, whether it's music or an invention, whatever it is, if only we could all have that switch we can just turn on and off like that. But it's just incredible what he was able to do to make this album and to still like have it. I realized Born in the USA came out how long after this or before it? Like it was, they were like bang, bang. And like, to me, I think this album, I don't know, it wouldn't have killed Bruce Springsteen's career. He still had like enough wherewithal that he would have come out with another one or done another E Street Band record, but it would have certainly killed a little momentum for him. I don't know if all these cities are signing up to have him in their stadiums. Maybe their arenas instead. And I think this album was what he needed to do to give us something like Born in the USA, where it was every bit of what he thought people only looked at him as, just to 11. He's like, all right, you want to do that? We're just going to crank this up and make this the loudest, best version of Bruce Springsteen you've ever heard.
Yeah, I lost track of who talked last, so I'm trying to be gentlemanly.
Polite off.
Yeah, I don't know. I struggle with like what else there is to say, I guess, at this point, because we've talked about like its literary merits, its musical merits, like the place that it holds, not just in Bruce Springsteen's discography, but I think at the time people were a little confused. They weren't necessarily like angry or didn't like it, but they were very taken aback by this like real shift. Like, again, the guy that gave us Hungry Heart is going to do an entirely acoustic album with the depressing, amazing, iconic album artwork. And it sounds like he recorded it on the fucking can. Like, what is this? But it was undeniable quality of songwriting and undeniable depth of emotion that you can't listen to it and be like, this is garbage. The people that did in reviews were, I'm convinced, doing that to be contrarians and are not to be taken seriously as a result. It's like Rex Reed's reviews of movies. He's going to be like, Disaster Movie was Citizen Kane and fucking Spotlight was like Ernest Scared Stupid. Like, he's just one of those like people that really couldn't see what he was doing. That's like intentional ignorance, because this is material that is accessible to everybody. If it's too dark and too depressing for you and it's not enough of a toe tapper, that's a legitimate argument, but that's also not you commenting on the quality.
Well, now you have an electric version.
Now you have an electric version.
No more excuses.
You got lives, you got demos, fuck off. So I don't know. I think it's a testament to like sticking to your guns and really, really believing in what it is that you're doing, and just providing something that, again, in a timeline dominated by synth, this was such a departure from what anyone else was doing in just the most simple way. And he wasn't trying to start a revolution. He was being honest. He was going back to basics. And for that reason, it's fucking incredible, widely considered by certain critical sources to be one of the top 3 albums of 1982, behind Richard and Linda Thompson's Shoot the Lights Out. And Tanner, do you know this one?
Imperial Bedroom, Elvis Costello.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Which is a fucking juggernaut. So,
and also it's couldn't be more opposite, because it's like his big Beatles-esque, tons of production on it. Conversely, I was looking at what this album came out late 82, so it would have been Grammys 83.
Yeah.
Record of the year, album of the year, Toto that year, Toto 4. So that's what was like, Toto 4, the nominees for album of the year, Toto 4, American Fool, John Cougar, Nightfly, Donald Fagen, Nylon Curtain, Billy Joel, and Tug of War, Paul McCartney.
That's
so
tough.
It's like, and like for, like we're looking at that. I mean, American Fool maybe not so much, but like as production values ramp up.
Mm-hmm.
Nylon Curtain, you could argue, is like Billy Joel's like kind of biggest album in terms of like the concept and the sound and everything. And one of his peers from just down the road in Jersey drops an acoustic absolute masterpiece.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that all of the record companies probably told the Grammys, they're like, we didn't pay all this goddamn money to make these albums for you to give these awards to somebody that used a 4-track recorder.
You gotta be fucking shitting me.
Yeah, there's probably some people very upset that he took a nomination in a lot of those.
Best new artist that year, Men at Work. Artist,
solid. Yeah. That was back when they'd only have 5 nominees per category.
Yes, very small.
Yeah. Well,
and
that I mean,
is like, Go ahead.
And that gives us an opportunity to let people know right now that we are going to be doing a Grammy predictions episode for these Grammys coming up in 2026 right off the bat. So make sure you tune into the episode that follows this one. Bruce Springsteen did not win enough Grammys in his career. Did he win any?
I mean, he must have. There's, you know what I mean? Like, he must have won,
bare minimum performance or something, best rock performance.
Let me look it up. Because
something for Western Stars, like best soundtrack, like
what a cop out that would be.
I know. I love that album though.
It's a great album, but it's like giving the Oscar to Leo for The Revenant.
20 Grammy Awards.
Okay, good.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
So best original song, he's got an Academy Award too. He's halfway to the look out. Didn't he win a Tony for Springsteen on Broadway?
Did he? I don't know. List of awards and nominations received by Bruce Springsteen.
Dancing in the Dark won Best Rock Vocal Performance. Tunnel of Love won Best Rock Vocal Solo Performance. Streets of Philadelphia won Best Rock Song, Best Rock Vocal, Song of the Year, Best Song Written for Visual Media. Ghost of Tom Joad, Best Contemporary Folk Album. Must have been a tough year in that category.
The Rising won Best Rock Album.
Yeah, I remember that. I just remembered that happened.
Oh, I'm sorry. I know what he was trying to do at a politically sensitive time in this country. It is not good. The Rising is not good, gang.
I like the song.
Yes, the song The Rising is good. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, Girls in Their Summer Clothes won Best Rock Song 2009.
Yep. Wow.
Magic got nominated but didn't win. I got beef. I got issue. Magic's amazing.
This tour.
Wrecking Ball.
Ball won.
I also have a Wrecking Ball shirt. So what are you going to do about it?
I don't know.
Well, I think
he was honored with a special Tony Award in 2018 for Springsteen on Broadway.
I think his Oscar is an honorary too, isn't it? Oh no, he won for
No,
Streets of
best
Philadelphia.
song. Yep, best original song.
Wow.
Does he have an Emmy? Is Bruce Springsteen gonna have an EGOT?
He's been nominated for
Three-time
3.
nominee. They got nominated for the halftime show. What won that year? Outstanding short format live action entertainment program.
Well, let's just find out.
The Royal Rumble.
Oh yeah. Clearly.
What would it even be under interactive media?
I don't oh no, outstanding special class, short format live action entertainment programs. The Daily Show, Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band Super Bowl halftime show, Battlestar Galactica, The Face of the Enemy, 30 Rock's Kenneth the Web Page, must be some tie-in web thing, and the winner, Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog.
What a trivia question
Yes.
that is.
Yes.
Wow.
Correct.
Dr. Horrible came out the year of. That's crazy. That is. Wow.
Yeah. There was some kind of like
Writers
SAG strike or something that
yeah,
year,
there
which
was
is
the
why they did
writer's
it.
strike. Wow.
Oh,
Yeah, what did that would be a hell of a trivia question.
absolutely.
Who did
we-
Bruce Springsteen lose the Emmy to in outstanding short form entertainment performance?
Neil Patrick Harris and Nathan Fillion.
Yeah, I for one think that Bruce Springsteen should have won every Grammy he's ever been nominated for. I truly believe he is the finest American songwriter that we've ever had. I even include Bob Dylan in that, and anybody else you want to throw my way. I think there is nobody that has been able to remain as relevant through the years, through the decades. Nobody that's done it like the boss. To me, I think his albums, am I saying Letter to You is as good as Born to Run? No, I'm not. But is Letter to You better than anything the Rolling Stones have shit out in the last 10 years? Certainly.
Ooh, right on.
Yeah, better than anything Billy Joel has put out. In
The
last
Rolling
10
Stones
years?
are
Certainly.
mummified cat turds at this point.
Yeah, so to me, I think if there's a lot of reasons to give Bruce Springsteen respect, whatever way you want to do that is fine by me, as long as you're giving the man his respect.
And we respect the man on this program. I think we've respected him for a pretty decent chunk of time, so we might want to dump out. I don't know. Anybody have any final thoughts before we send the people on their way?
Tanner, you had that 10-minute soliloquy you were gonna.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right. All right, start the timer. No, like for me, the experience of listening to this while also learning about it at the same time, was interesting, and I'm envious and I'm hopeful that people that have been hoping and looking for this thing since the rumblings of it, I hope that it stacks up for them and that it was worth waiting for, because I just don't have that perspective. For me, it's a very cool story. The lore behind it is absolutely legendary. Boiling it mostly down to the cassette in the pocket and Steven Van Zandt telling him that it's a legitimate piece of art and that like he has to do it by himself. And again, you look at what happens right after, and Born in the USA comes out, and they go massive, they go worldwide, they go stadium tour after stadium tour, and they, all this stuff takes place before we were born, so we don't really have like a frame of reference for what Springsteen sounded like before, during, and after. All we can do is kind of learn after the fact and just devour as much content as we can, which things like this, the lore, and the ultimate release of the Electric album, just like it makes you feel good to be a music fan when things like this happen, that there's still good stuff out there, and it might not be new in terms of like a new album from your favorite band, like waiting for like the next Coheed to come out, for instance, you know what I mean? But yeah, it wasn't really on my radar until you had asked me to hop on, and I'm very glad I did. Very rewarding thing just to read all about it, and I'm glad that it saw the light of day, and that so many people now get to experience it, and ultimately see what Nebraska could have sounded like if the label had their say, and that the band and Bruce stuck to their guns, and Nebraska still sits up there as a very singular piece of art and one of his best, if not his best, records of all time.
It's some of the songwriting of which he's the proudest, as he should be. And you talk about it being something that makes you feel good. I would say Bruce Springsteen is not just an American legend, but he's an American legend you can feel good about, because Ronald Reagan is an American legend. But Bruce Springsteen is the kind of American legend that, 200 years from now, do I want to conflate him with George Washington? Absolutely. I'm gonna. You got George Washington, you got Bruce Springsteen. It pretty much tells you everything you need to know about the first 250 years of this country. It was all downhill from there. But, if you can carry two things into the future, how about George Washington and Bruce Springsteen? But like, in all seriousness, he's something uniquely American and non-controversial that you can just feel good about. He's a piece of culture, beloved around the world legitimately, and you can take that to the bank and you can feel good about that. You can feel great about an album like Nebraska. You can find more thoughts like this at youtube.com/C/out on that line. Folks, I'm not going to belabor the point and do a crazy one. You got all the way to the end here. So you might as well hit the thumbs up, click the bell so you never miss out on a video, subscribe to the channel, and leave us a comment. What would you like to see next? What should we cover on the record or react to or podcast? It is all fair game at youtube.com/C/out on that line. And folks, we'll see you next time.